Okay, Clerk Gorham, I understand that there's not any other board members that will be attending this meeting, so we can get started. David, I mean. Sorry. I was thinking of roll call, Clerk Gorham. But you're right. It's Chair Kirby of the HR.
All right. Human Resources Committee, July 9th. Our first item is the staffing report. Mr. Swarsky, any comments, issues?
Again, we have continued extended school years, so you'll see those certified extensions. We do have some certified appointments that are coming into play now, and you'll see these this month and next month as we're filling in for the retirements and that. Some certified permanent increases. At this point in time, we do have people who take decreases, and they're voluntary temporary decreases. These are decreases they have requested, and you'll see some of those on the certified temporary decreases. There's a certified temporary increase, and I'm going to check this one because I believe it should be over in the permanent. So for Kaya Trimble, that should also be a permanent increase. Non-certified extensions, again, to support the special services area primarily. Non-certified retirements, I do see a name in there I recognize as a person next to me. Linda Kinnear, congratulations, Linda. And Thomas Margot, who you'll see in there, he's previously retired, but he's under this phased retirement plan, and this is a fairly new thing in the last few years, and it has to be renewed every year. So essentially what we're doing is approving the continuation of his retirement through this phased retirement plan. So we thought it was best that it's in there so people understand and recognize that it's in there. And we will see that in some other individuals as the years go on if they continue this phased program. And I believe that's it for now on that part.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Have the positions for the principal at Lincoln Park and
they're still up. They're still posted at this point. They're posted.
Okay,
yes.
Yep. They're posted. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And the residentials.
And the residentials, correct. Okay. All right. No, there are no questions by anybody? All right. Next is we have resolutions. I think we did this last year. Employment by the school board of employment of the district by school board members. Any questions on this? This was.
I just wanted to add on the following page, we do have the state statute that requires these to be approved.
Member Oswald?
I just wanted to comment that at MSBA they said that they were going to try to raise that limit through this past legislative season, and I never heard of anything happening with that, so I'm just assuming that it didn't go through. But it was going to be raised to like 10,250 or something around that amount. But I assume they'll just try again if it didn't pass. So
we can review. I mean, if those updates would be in the state statutes as we look at those, so we can check that. It's right on my desktop. I'll look into that. Thank you.
Just a comment. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yes, I heard that too. I think that in some of the smaller districts, people work as bus drivers, and it would cause a problem. So,
Member Kirby, that's exactly what I was going to say, and I think the process starts with the school board delegation. Is what we heard from Terry Morrow at our last leadership's MSBA leadership forum about that, and actually they were hoping to raise it to 15,000 for exactly what Member Kirby said, that smaller districts are finding where school board members would like to give service, bus drivers, substitutes, where there's severe shortages. So the delegation was asked to look into that. I would think a call to Terry Morrow might might even speed it up. They might have passed it, but I don't know.
Member Lefferkamp?
Yeah, I was going to say, we certainly can follow up with the School Board Association, and if it is something that we feel strongly about, the delegate process will be beginning again and asking in September, I believe, is when they start looking for resolutions. So, we can bring it forward if we want as well. It was actually from, I think, Badette or Roseau, a small community up in northwestern Minnesota that brought it forth, but supported by everybody at the delegate assembly.
Okay. Next, we have 2 policies, first reading. The first one, equal employment opportunity. Policy 410, replacing, 4010. Any comments on this? Doesn't look to have been changed at all. Member Oswald? Member Superintendent, do you want to start?
Sure. These changes were part of the Department of Civil Rights review, and so all we had to do for this one was add the direct contacts for the areas of Title IX and 504. So that's in Section E. You're also going to be looking at the next one that also had a section added for the same reason, with suggestions from the Office of Civil Rights.
So everything in dark bold is what the office suggested. Okay. Member Oswald.
I just had a question about when we're looking for employment of different people of color and wish to increase our percentage of different ethnicities within our workforce. How does this not come into play? Or how does this fit in with our desire to increase our diversity?
I think it states what our desire is and within the federal standards and the state standards. But in addition to this, we do have our retention and recruitment initiatives that are taking place that they can't supersede, they can't overrule something that is a state statute, but it's more of a process or a plan on how we would increase our employees of color.
And so with the general statement of policy that you can't discriminate based on on the basis of race, if a person of color that applies for a job gets the job because they're a person of color, is that discrimination based on race for the other people?
I'm not going to state that as a district standard. I know it's been tested before as reverse discrimination. I think, our intent as a district is increasing our pool of applicants of color in order to bring in the best qualified person. But I think in all the initiatives that I've been involved with, it's not that you lower any standards or that you always want to hire the best candidate, but you want to be able to make sure you're looking in the right places to get the best candidates, and recruiting and recruiting from the right places to get the best candidates.
Okay, so I'm in support of what we're trying to do. I want to make that clear because I just want to have a general response to people that approach me with questions like that, because if I can think of it, everybody else can think of it too. So, thanks.
Anything else? All right. Then we have an informational item.
Then we have one more on the complaints.
Pardon?
Letter C.
Oh, I thought we went over that as well. I'm sorry.
That revised policy 103.
Right.
And I believe this is another continuation from the audit that we had. It was suggested that this information be added to our complaint procedure.
Member Oswald?
I'm wondering if all of the stuff that we've added in, that's been underlined, should be a regulation instead of inserted in the policy, because it gives details on how and why and how to do it, and policy doesn't typically do that.
I do not disagree with you. However, the Office of Civil Rights required that it be in policy, and so that's why we've added it to policy. This isn't really different from what we've been doing as far as procedures, but they wanted to see it included in policy. The same is true for, we don't usually put names, we put positions in policy, and yet they wanted the names in there specifically. So anytime those positions change, we'll have to go back in and change the policies.
Under investigation, Part C, I see that's added, underlined, and bolded. Is that a model policy language, or was that our own? As I'm kind of reading it, so it says, in determining whether the alleged conduct constitutes a violation of this policy, the school district shall consider the facts and the surrounding circumstances, such as the nature of the behavior, past incidents, or continuing patterns of behavior, the relationships between the parties involved, and the context in which the alleged incident occurred. Is that a...
We had some specific information that was provided to us with a general suggestion of guidelines of what we would put into our policy from the Minnesota Department of Administration and the Civil Rights. And so we used theirs verbatim and only changed, there was only one area that we changed. It wasn't in the investigation piece. It was actually under, I have to find the section now. I'll probably have to come back to that, but there was one section that said that a notification had to be made to the superintendent if somebody filed a verbal complaint within 24 hours. But if somebody came in on a Friday afternoon, filed a complaint, that may not happen. So we turned it to 2 business days. Everything else is exactly as they had suggested that we put in.
From the Department of Human Rights? Mm-hmm. Okay. Civil Rights. Department of Civil Rights. Thank you for clarifying.
I just wanted to ditto Member Oswald's comment about whether or not this was policy. I was thinking the same thing, and for your superintendent, your clarification. That's why I enjoy coming to my committee meetings. I looked at this, thought about it, knew I was going to have some questions, but all of us together can kind of give clarity and help us along, so thank you.
Jordan.
This was also consistent with the policies that we had to update. There was a few different policies we had to do as part of this audit, and we learned that there were not MSBA model policies, and we actually ended up borrowing from other districts, the Office of Civil Rights, based on their recommendations, and they're always excited to see if we had anything to offer back to them with some of those. So we have had to do some learning. It sounds like you're kind of going through the same process with that, and they have been open to edits, and they've been pretty good to work with, and when we do make some changes, they usually look at those and say, yep, those are good. So, but that was just a little experience that we had through ours too. So,
nothing else? All right. Now
Under the Section 3 of grievance procedures for complaints of discrimination, under the bullet point of C, it's the end of that paragraph looks like a name should have been inserted there, because it ends with, if the complaint involves a human resource officer, the complaint shall be filed directly with a different staff member, such as the superintendent or school board chair, as designated by the school board, in parentheses. So I don't know if that was meant to have somebody put into that, or if there's different language, because I don't believe, brackets belong in a policy. Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Next, we have a summary of harassment complaints.
Yeah, I just handed out prior to the meeting, and this will be included in the packet. It was pulled while we just needed to finalize some numbers, and there were a couple questions, so I didn't want to put information out there that was incorrect. And also, this looks a little bit different than the one we did last year, and I think we misfired last year, where we thought maybe the educational group or that was covering where they were covering the bullying. They weren't necessarily covering the harassment or the harassment that was coded at Infinite Campus. So we did capture that this year. And what you're seeing above is what was captured in Infinite Campus. Down below, these were used with the formal use of the complaint form. And these were generally because they wouldn't involve student on student or student on teacher or such that they're not, how do I want to say this, they're not reported in Infinite Campus. So. And then just for the purposes of not being able to identify what it might be, if they're under 10, we don't break out the different reasons for it.
Member Oswald.
Is the use of the harassment complaint form different than the bullying form?
Yes, it is.
And so the harassment complaint form isn't online? Or is
it is out there, yes, it is. It is available online.
So how do people know which one to use?
One says harassment, one says bullying. No, but the bullying one is located in the student section, I believe it is. And the harassment one, I believe, is located in the human resources. There is some explanation of both forms in those areas, and I think by reading through those forms, many times what happens is we'll have someone call into here and say, hey, this is what's going on, I want to file a complaint. And sometimes just the verbal complaint that they're filing, that we have to accept that also. And we consider that almost as is they filled out a formal complaint.
Okay. And this is just student data, this isn't like employee harassment complaints?
This is everything. So what I can definitely say is if you see it's an Infinite Campus, it's going to involve students.
Okay.
And generally the ones that were on the form that are not in Infinite Campus are going to involve more employees.
All right, thank you.
Anything else? Well, seeing none, we have a future item remains nepotism. If there are no other questions, comments, we'll bring the HR meeting to a close.
Okay, and thank you. And member Trinka's absence, member Oswald will be running the business committee meeting.
Thank you. So here's the fantastical business committee meeting. I hope it's as enjoyable for me as it everybody else is. We need to welcome our guest from Marcia McLennan, our insurance people that help us keep everybody safe. And we're looking forward to whatever you'd like to tell us. Hopefully it's good.
Well, thank you for your time this afternoon. I think the leadership team passed out a summary of the insurance premiums for the district's property casualty program for August 1, 2018 to 19 versus 2019 to 20. And I just would like to briefly go through how last year's premiums compared to this year's. If you've got that in front of you, it shows you the breakout of premiums for property, general liability, school leaders, legal liability, the crime, inland marine, automobile, umbrella, the premiums for covering the vacant buildings, and cyber liability protection. All of those would be considered, your package lines of insurance. Last year, the district all in paid $449,538 at renewal, relatively flat renewal going up to $450,515. So it's an increase of 0.002%. You'll see the workers' compensation is the line of insurance coverage that's elevating. We were in front of the school board, I believe, in March to kind of forewarn you of the increase in claim activity that happened in the 2018 year that is driving this increase, which the district will face for effective August 1, 2020. So basically, the premiums that were offered at renewal for work comp, originally the insurance company wanted about $638,000 at renewal. We were able to negotiate that down to $604,000, largely on the strength of what the district has agreed to do for some loss prevention measures. Where a lot of the loss drivers are happening on work comp is in injuries to your paraprofessionals where they're dealing with students that exhibit challenging behaviors. I like the relationship that we have with the workers' comp carrier, with RAS. They've got a very good program to deal with trying to head those injuries off before they even happen. And on August 27th, we have a loss control person from RAS, Teresa Parrish, that's going to be working with that department. What we did was we kind of did a research meeting to understand what's actually being done in that area. Everything's being done that could possibly be getting done. All you need is just more repetition and more visibility. So we're working very closely with that department head, and we've had great cooperation. So I think that that's a good go-forward initiative to try to bend the curve on the comp spike that we're seeing. The district's safety director, Jason Barsness, is working with our loss control person here in Duluth to help bring more visibility to the safety committee. And then quarterly, we meet with the leadership team, representatives from HR, from the business committee, to actually go through all of your claims. And this last year, what drives that premium is the actual claim reserves themselves. We were able to have a positive impact on 4 of those claims and bring the reserves down by about $87,000. So by doing that, that helps safeguard the district's work comp premium long term. I still see a lot of value in us coming in quarterly and doing those meetings with the leadership team to make sure that the claims close out at the appropriate amount and that the district is not getting overcharged on workers' compensation. A couple of real quick high-level comments on the property insurance. The district still gets to use a full blanket limit of liability on any given structure, so you get blanket and agreed amount coverage. We increased the building values by 2%. And you get the full $507 million to apply to any given building or content loss. There's a modest increase in the general liability because of a little bit of a spike in claim activity. The inland marine went up from 8.3 million to 9 million, just because we've increased the value of the hardware that you're insuring. Industry-wide right now, we're seeing a spike in auto claims. So the auto pricing industry-wide, we're seeing increases. The district right now, for every dollar of auto premium paid, about 87 cents in losses. So, and then on the umbrella liability, we're taking that from 3 million to 5 million, so that you've got an added layer above your general liability, your auto, and your workers' compensation. We benchmark that umbrella liability against about 70 other schools that we insure in Minnesota, and we feel it's prudent to raise that umbrella limit up to 5 million. Any questions about what you have in front of you, or can I add any more clarity to what we're seeing for the renewal offer?
What are we covering with inland marine?
It would be all of the computer technology, the hardware, your smart boards, your servers. It actually covers all of the snow removal equipment, lawnmower equipment, anything, all the equipment that's not licensed for over-the-road use. You've got 7 or 8 pieces of equipment that are on that schedule.
Yeah, 2 questions. One is the cyber liability. Some of us went to a training at one of our school board associations around cyber liability, and so is what we have consistent, I guess, with what other school districts have in terms of liability?
Yeah, it's necessary to have a separate standalone policy that not only provides the district with, in the event that there's litigation because you had a third party that got access to, the district's computer systems, but if an individual has their information accidentally released, that policy is also going to provide credit monitoring for the people that had their information accidentally released. It's also going to provide the required notification to any party that had their information compromised. That policy is actually going to send the letter out to them notifying them that, hey, your information could have been compromised. Please contact the insurance company so that we can set you up with credit monitoring. They'll send up to 250,000 letters out in the event of an accidental breach. So it's a policy that we set up 6 or 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's been tested 4 or 5 times. We've had some incidents where it's come into play. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. And I always appreciate your background information you provide. I had a second question, and this might be for Mr. Spooner, but I appreciated you highlighting injuries to paraprofessionals and some of the training that we're providing, particularly on August 27th. You also mentioned the safety committees. That does include union leadership, right? Okay, that's what I had thought. And so are you meeting with the safety committee quarterly, or is it the leadership team quarterly? I'm sorry if
it could have been confusing the way I explained it.
Yeah.
The actual claim review meetings where we're going through each high-cost work comp claim, we're doing that on a quarterly basis. The safety committee is really, we're doing that at the direction of Jason Barsness. Jason, he kind of has ownership of that and is using Alana Sukala from our office in Duluth to kind of help set the agenda, bring the parties together, come up with realistic goals and objectives of what we're trying to accomplish in this next year, and bringing formality, to the actual process. I don't know how often they're meeting. I could get that and respond separately.
And to clarify, it doesn't have to be union leadership, but the goal is for union leadership, but at least there's a representative from each unit.
Okay. Thank you. That's important to me.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for helping us keep tabs on safety stuff related to our paraprofessionals, because I want to make sure that we don't like our paras getting injured and we want them to be as safe as possible. So thank you for helping us accomplish that goal.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions? Going once, going twice, sorry. Oh, Miss Erickson, go
Just
ahead.
wanted to comment that we are waiting on one more number on the vacant. So the premiums might be a few dollars different than what they're seeing on this report. I think Dee was still waiting to do one thing. It wouldn't be material, but the amount on the quote might be slightly different.
I think we're within a couple of $100 on the premiums that are going to be estimated here for the vacant building policy.
So what comes next week may be slightly different. We're still waiting on one number.
Yep.
Thank you for that note. I like to know when numbers change like that. So thank you very much for coming. And I didn't see Ms. Laffer-Kemp. Go ahead.
I just want to clarify, there was just one page that was submitted to us, right? I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
See you next week. All right. So we get to move on our agenda. Number 2, the financial report. Is there any questions in number 1, or would you like to or number 2, or would you like to comment on anything, CFO Erickson?
I'm sorry, Peggy isn't here this meeting, and so you're seeing the May information, and we plan on for the August meeting to have an update for June, and then just an update on our budget process again at our August meeting when we have more information available.
And when were you going to start training us on our highlighting parts of our budget? Is that going to start soon?
That is going to start in August. We, Peggy and I have already met, and we have some plans. We're going to coordinate it with kind of the finance calendar that we have for the school year. This morning I had the opportunity to do a levy webinar to talk about the levy information system that districts are going to go through. That process will be opening within the next week or so, so we're already into levy season. Even though it's July, we're going to be talking about that process, and those things that will be on that will be doing a proposed in September, and then with I know it seems far away, but it's just around the corner. Truth in Taxation is coming back again. So we'll be talking about that process as well. So, and with some of the changes in legislation, especially in relation to the local optional, which there was a board-approved referendum, and that's going to convert into local optional. So what that looks like on our levy certification will look a little bit different. But keeping in mind that the levy that we'll be working on this summer is actually for fiscal year 21. So we'll already start working on processes for next fiscal year, even though we've just started the fiscal year that we're in.
Okay. And so under the budget, I guess I have a question regarding the budget we just passed. As I think all of us are aware, there was an editorial in the paper. And I just wanted to know if you had any response to that editorial. Superintendent.
Sure. I was planning to probably write up a response to that, but I can kind of give you kind of a general sense of my thoughts on that. First of all, I think that the process that we went through was the most thorough I've been through in 10 years of leadership in the district, and the most inclusive. We worked very closely with our school teams and with our principals, and they were really directing how the budget was built, and it was based on last year's budget, or this, yeah, I guess it's that last year now, the 18-19 school year. And really the staffing the budget's carried forward from last year to this year, with the exception of the changes that were made in compensatory. And the resolution that the board passed regarding compensatory says that funding would go to sites as generated, a percentage of it, and we'd be at 85% of the generated amount. The generated amounts are not stable from year to year based on the population of our schools. And so when we initially found out those numbers, I can remember sitting down with Kathy and Peggy, and they showed me the numbers, and I said, oh, the schools that have the highest counts are affected the most by this. And we need to look at this differently to make sure that we can kind of control some of that effect. For instance, Laura MacArthur was set to be reduced by almost 175,000. The way that we did it, by making sure that all of our schools had some of that reduction, rather than have them cut that whole 175,000, we asked them to cut 141,000, which meant 33,000 had to come from somewhere else. That was also true for Myers-Wilkins, for Piedmont, for Stowe, for all of our schools that had those higher counts. We made sure that they weren't cutting that full amount. That amount came from our other schools and from general fund. And so about 115,000 came from our schools that wouldn't have seen a reduction. Homecroft would have actually had an increase of $437 in their compensatory funds, but we asked them to cut $10,339. So some of our schools gave up more. Congdon would have been reduced by about $1,200. We asked them to reduce $18,000. So our East End schools did not have, it didn't match what their generated percentage would be. We made sure that that was spread out more evenly. So that's not a full response, but I feel good that we've gone through our equity process. We used our equity tool to make sure that we were considering who was going to be affected by these decisions, to make sure that it wasn't having so much of an effect on our schools with the highest amount of free and reduced price lunch receiving students.
Member Lowell.
As school board rep that represents the Western community, the District 4, where somewhat the perception would be that we have lost due to this, I compliment you, and I've met with Kathy to explain this, and your explanation right now verifies the others. But I also want to share with you that during this late spring and early parts of June, when we were voting on the budget, I went directly to our leadership in those buildings, because that was where my heart wanted to be. If my principals and my leadership in the Western community could tell me that they felt validated, listened to, and that their needs were being met, then I felt comfortable voting for a budget. I think numbers can say one thing, but I also think programming and class size and programs that are helping decrease the achievement gap. As I talked with the leadership in our Western community schools, at least right now, I know that budgets change and fall could bring something else, and we'll stay on top of that, but they felt like their programs that were helping graduation rates were staying intact. They were able to maintain those. They were able to maintain interventionists. That was really key for me, and I've talked with them and with you, and I'm hoping that that's going to stay. They felt that their class sizes in our most high-needs schools in the western part are going to be strong, are going to be able to help our students that are still struggling. So I am confident in meeting with my community, who I represent here, and knowing that we are doing the best we can. Money's tight. We've said that all along, and I wish it was different. And so I am hoping that you will respond and we can have some dialogue in our community. I've opened up opportunity for parents in my Western community to meet with me, and I cannot be as good at sharing, but I'll learn. I've written down some of the things I've learned so that when my community asks me questions, I can be as clear as you are with sharing how we're doing our budget. And I have to go to the leadership in my schools that are there working with kids and seeing the results, that if they know that they could have lost more, and they are thankful that you were listening and that their needs in their buildings will stay the same as it was this year. It's not perfect, but hopefully we'll see gains. So thank you.
Member Gorham.
I think when recognizing this too, this issue of a substantial decline in comp ed funding being correlated with free and reduced rate enrollment at certain schools, I think the intention here that the state has is good, and that's to provide extra support where there's a higher density of students and families experiencing, I don't know if poverty is not quite the right word, but challenges, resource challenges, fiscal resource challenges. And the reality of the policy is that the funding that we get as a district is determined every year by those counts. And so it can vary from year to year to year. Not every stream of funding is as variable as that. You can take a 3-year average, for instance, so that as you budget and plan, you can make compensation slower. But that's the reality we're dealing with, is that's how our state government has set this up. And I think there's a lot of challenges with that policy in terms of us and as far as planning goes, and serving students. So not to be too critical, because I'm not sure I have a better idea, but maybe as we lobby, we could ask that this be something that becomes more of a 3-year average instead of leaving us with a fall off like we've had.
CFO Erickson.
First, thank you for the comments. This compensatory revenue is challenging in a couple ways. One is that it is based on free and reduced lunch counts. It is site-based, but gives some flexibility in state statute, but our local resolution kind of gives us a different direction there. Those pupil counts are a year old by the time we are allocated those funding sources. So when we look at the loss of those pupil counts in those buildings, the need doesn't change when the pupil counts change. And to the point of Member Gorham, I would say probably maybe 5 years ago or so, we went to the Capitol on behalf of some districts that I used to work for to actually do a 3-year average or a prior year rollback, similar to the declining enrollment revenue that we get as a community. Our legislators, while we did get a hearing, it doesn't work the same for every district. Compensatory revenue is very unique to districts across the state. So there isn't necessarily a formula that works for everyone. And if you can't find a way to help every district, it's more difficult to find that overall change. So I would say, again, we do what we can with the revenue that we're receiving, and being able to be flexible and to be able to utilize those funds in the best ways can help the district. We are certainly allocating based on the resolution, and we will continue to do that. But because of the situation we're in, just because of the pupil counts, we're very hopeful this fall, this October, we'll see a bump back up. But those dollars won't be here until fiscal year 21. So we're already waiting a year to see the effects of that. So again, it's a delayed process. We're using not current pupil counts to the current funding, and then we have to wait a year to get there. But I do appreciate the comments, and I think we continue to work really hard with our buildings to make sure that they're able to utilize those dollars in the best ways. When we went through this process of asking buildings to look at reductions, not a single building did it the same way. Everybody looked at what their needs were, how the process worked, and we were trying to be as flexible as we could from a funding standpoint to make sure that we could get them as much resource as we could afford. But again, knowing that we had our budget challenges. So I really appreciated the work of the building administration that we met with multiple times, and the team of people that we met continuously over the last 6 months to make sure we could get the budget put together.
Assistant Superintendent Horton.
Yeah, having a chance to go through a few different budget processes in different districts, I have to say I was very impressed by the work that both Superintendent Gronseth and CFO Erickson did on this process, including building leadership in following the CIT process, making sure teachers' voice was actually in there as well. It was a very inclusive process and really trying to support equity in the best way that they can, given the different resolutions, state statutes, the unique way of funding, and just a very complex world, doing everything they could to meet students' needs. So I was very impressed with the process, and having seen that applied in other districts, it's a very, very inclusive process, and a lot of time and effort was put into involving as many people as they could, as often as they could.
Member Loeffler-Kemp?
Yeah, thank you for that input, Assistant Superintendent Horton. It's always good to have perspective from people who have worked in other districts that you bring here, and I always appreciate, as a school board member, going to different school board trainings and hearing how other school districts do it, so appreciate that. I guess I just wanted to comment and just say that as board chair through the budget process, and as someone who's sat through 7 budget processes with our district, I've seen lots of different ways that we've worked to educate the public, to involve the community, involve our staff in input, and I think we've done it well over the years. I think this year we did it exceptional in terms of working with our sites, our principals, our leadership teams at those schools, who really know what the needs are in their schools, and so I really appreciate that extra effort that happened there. I also, as I've been talking out in the community, I really try and stress the process that we used as well, and the many avenues for the public to learn about school finance and school funding. And again, Kathy, I appreciate your expertise you bring to the table, and the many ways in our committee of the whole meetings, especially, that you highlighted the process to the public as well as to us as board members. So just want to, stress, I think we as board members, that is one of the roles as we're out in the community explaining things, is that we invite people to be more educated themselves on how we do our budget and the challenges to school finance. And then I just really want to reiterate again, I believe that all of us on this current board support the resolution we passed. We're committed to that resolution. And the loss, though, we just, as Superintendent Gronseth said, that the loss in comp ed funding has meant drastic reductions to all our schools, and that generated, including our Eastern End schools that I represent and my kids go to. And all of our schools have needs of students. The numbers might be smaller, but we have needs in all of our schools. And so, I just, hope we, as we're talking to the community, we recognize that, and we share that all of our schools are taking a hit this year. And if there could be, some headlines, I don't want that to be the only headline, because we're doing so much, investing in so many other ways in our schools, but all of our schools are taking a hit on this. And so thank you all for attending the many committee of the whole meetings that we chose to have, to add additional meetings to help educate, ourselves and have a thoughtful process, as well as to educate the community. So those are just a couple of my thoughts.
I haven't had a chance to weigh in yet, and so I want to say that this has been such an inclusive team process, and I really like knowing that everyone is feeling valued and everyone can take ownership in their piece of the pie that they worked for. I think that adds strength and character to our schools, and adds to value to our reputations, that we care about everybody that is involved working with kids. I think we need to remember that equity doesn't just sit in comp ed. Equity is involved in everything we do. Comp ed was the decision that we made with Comp Ed to change the way it was allocated was equity intended, but so is, me questioning the affirmative action policy, and so is, us looking at every contract to make sure it's serving our needs and our purposes. Equity has to go throughout every decision that we have, and I'm committed to doing that. The Comp Ed money, the resolution wanted the money to remain where the money was generated, and every school earns it. That means there's need in every school. I can echo what Member Loeffler-Kemp just said. You don't need proof, because the proof is that they earned some money, and that's that. So they should get that money too to help alleviate their resource need, or to help the resource need. I don't know. Careful with quoting me over there, Adele, if you do. Anyways, Member Loeffler-Kemp, did you have anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate one other thing, is that we continue to invite the public to our committee meetings, particularly our education committee meetings, where we often have in-depth conversations with our staff or community members about investments and programs that we're working on. We continue to invite the public to serve on different committees within our district to help advise us. We continue to invite the public to work with us, whether it's on crafting our budget or volunteering in our schools. And so, again, as your board chair, let's work together to be effective, and we invite the community to work with us.
Member Kirby?
Oh, thanks. I would like to echo thanks to Kathy and the administration for getting the staff involved from the very beginning. I think that's crucial. They're in the trenches and they know what's going on. Secondly, I think the free and reduced lunch category has problems, in addition to not getting the money for a year. I mean, it's a surrogate measure. There are certainly children who are free and reduced lunch who do absolutely very well. And there are some who don't get it, who don't do well at all. And we lose sight of this by lumping everybody together. Congdon always gets the bad rap. I can tell you that they lost 18,000. There are more than 30 homeless students at that school, which is not the biggest percentage in the district, but one of the biggest. And people lose sight of that. And they need help and intervention for that, and yet they're losing money. So I think that we need to look at it in a very, we need to look at the students, not necessarily the schools all the time. So, but thanks very much for all the work.
So I don't know if I want to go this direction necessarily, but I know that it's a response that my community has shared, and I think I have some experience with it, and it is like, so why did we lose Comp Ed dollars? Why did we come in lower? When really, if we looked at our community, we know that there's needs, So as a board, I just want to share with you, for the years that I've worked in the district, is that, we ask our families to submit a form, and that's kind of how we do it. And we have been vigilant as educators and as people working in districts sitting at early registration. There's the place where we drop off the forms, and they're monitored and they're recorded, and our support staff, our office staff goes into those forms and they see who hasn't, and they communicate, and we try our best. Is there something that we're not doing? Is there something that we can answer our community with because they're asking why are we losing out on Comp Ed dollars? So just maybe a quick, I know that this is maybe not on the finance committee.
I'm not sure any of it was on the agenda really, but it's a really good conversation. I'm glad we're having it. Those are all questions that we have thought of as well. We've talked with our principals in our principals meetings, really reviewing our processes. This was the first year of an online application. However, most of our schools still provided paper copies for people or help them to go online and fill them out. That was the first place we thought of too. We also have 3% unemployment rate, and it could be that more families are doing great, which, if that's the case, that's a celebration, right? Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that the needs go away. It doesn't mean that their situation totally changes. It might mean that they're just barely not qualified. We have many families who are right at that qualification line, and the matter of a few dollars could take them out of eligibility. So that's a possibility. We'll be redoubling our efforts to make sure that all of our families are applying. As you said, at conferences, at open houses, at every opportunity we have, we review last year's list compared to this year's list, and we contact those families. We really do try to make sure that everyone who can be identified is identified. And then if lunch debt is climbing up, we've had some conversations about lunch debt and how people are helping to cover that, and we're very thankful for that. But when we see those, we do reach out to those families and provide another opportunity to sign up. So it's never too late to sign up, although our funding sources have a deadline date to them. And so, such as compensatory education funding, there is a cutoff date. Title I, there is a cutoff date. But that doesn't mean that the families couldn't have those services at any time during the year. So we will continue to be reaching out to families and trying to figure that out. My hope is that the economy has improved so much that there's fewer families that have that need.
Member Gorham, you don't have anything to say anymore?
Sure. I'll keep it brief. I was just listening to Member Kirby's comment, and I think he was hitting on something that I didn't quite articulate very well, but I just want to be very clear that I think the word that I meant to use earlier when I used poverty is financially burdened families. We can recognize that can present some challenges for students and families who live in that circumstance, but that does not. I want to be careful about labeling. Mm-hmm. We do know data. We do know that there's data that shows that there's something there, but I think when we talk about things broadly with broad brushstrokes, we start to create stereotypes, and I think that's harmful in a way. I have high expectations for this board, for the staff that work for this district, and for our students. And we should all be doing our best, including getting the resources where they need to be. Because you come from circumstances of economic burden, your risk may be higher or you may have more challenges, and we should recognize that. I just want to acknowledge that I think everyone has a story. You can come from a household that is wealthy, where there's abuse, where there's adverse experiences. I feel like that's important to say, so I want to say it.
Member Lofall.
Yeah, this might not have been exactly where we thought this conversation was going to go today, but it is the kind of conversations I feel our board sometimes doesn't have an opportunity to share, either because we meet in this kind of scenario with an agenda set, or it's because we oftentimes have business that needs to get done. But I enjoy this conversation. I enjoy my colleagues' information. I enjoy finding out why comp ed. And again, that's why sitting with the CFO at times and sitting in Bill's office too and coming to our committee meetings. I told Kathy this the other day. I wish she could go on Almanac North, or she could go out into a general public where people that really are interested in our process, to listen to you share your honest observation about we address this budget according to what our buildings needed, and that's a need, and it's not based on a comp ed dollar or whatever. It was the needs that they see in their buildings, and again, I think our staff and our leadership, like Dr. Kirby Director Kirby talked about, felt included, felt listened to, felt like they were getting the best. And we could go down the rabbit hole, which we will not, about other ways, other places our budget struggles and why we're financially trying to do the best with what we've got. We are doing the best what we got. We've got a good leader. We've got good leadership. We've got a good vision. And we have a board that's listening to each other, respecting each other, asking questions. And now it's really up to us to try to share with our community as best we can that we're a district going forward. So thank you. Thank you.
CFO Erickson.
Thank you. I want to clarify when we talk about need that
That's true.
we have way more need than the resources we have available. One of the huge challenges that I had walking into this district was knowing that, and I think I've shared this multiple times, and when I first got here and met with different groups, I would say, I got to get that person money. They need more money. There's needs in every single department, every single building, every single area of this district. We could be providing more resources. The foundation of this budget was the 19 budget. We knew that budget, we suspected that this was going to be a balanced budget. You know that in every budget process, we're working on estimates. We can't say for sure today that we're going to be balanced if something happens tomorrow that is unexpected. But what we knew was that this was a pretty good foundation budget as far as what we had in the buildings, and then could we afford to keep moving forward. So what we did allow was for that flexibility in the buildings and the programs to tell us within that context, within that frame of what we could afford, what would best fit your needs. So could they switch up within what they had? There wasn't necessarily more money to give out, and frankly, there was nothing worse than the day that we had to send out the email asking the buildings to do a little bit less because of compensatory revenue, as a driver of knowing that that was a fixed amount that we were going to have less. But we did try to give as much flexibility as we could to the programs and the buildings to find their ways to be able to work within those budget constraints. So I'm sensitive to the word, but I do believe we are attempting to try to fill the needs the best we can based on the resources that we have available. With that said, everyone's definition of need may be different, but we left that up to the sites and the administration teams and those people that were involved in this process. So I just wanted to be clear that we could use a lot more money if we wanted to meet all of our needs. So if anyone has any available, we would be happy to take that. Thank you.
I don't think the 7 cents in my pocket would help, but I'm willing to donate if you say you need it. Member Loeffler-Kemp.
I really appreciate that closing comment there, Kathy. And I would just say, in spite of that, in spite of the needs, the incredible work, the incredible programming, the incredible educational opportunities our kids are getting, our staff are working under in terms of working conditions. We are doing some wonderful things, and I'm not saying this to pat ourselves on the back. I'm saying just like we need to be talking to the community about our budget process, we need to continue to be promoting in the community what is happening and the great things that are happening throughout our schools and the opportunities, the rich opportunities. I just had an opportunity to talk to a new family in our community who's new to our district, moving from another large school district here in Minnesota. And after I got done highlighting some of the questions that they had concerns about, they were very impressed. And so just, I know some people say I'm always too rosy about things, but, my kids, fortunately, all different learners have done very well in this district. I know many other kids have too. And so let's keep talking about those successes in spite of the many needs we have as well.
All right, I think we're ready to move on. That was a very thorough discussion that I appreciated, and I'm glad we had it, as Member Lowell pointed out too. CFO Erickson, do you have any highlights you want to talk about from your numbery financial report?
Thank you. Letter F, the APU projections, just wanted to talk briefly. So fiscal year 19, while over, the process of determining our final student counts is not over until the end of November. But each submission that we do gives us an indication of where we were in fiscal year 19, which is an estimate or a driver of where we see our enrollment counts for fiscal year 20 and beyond. And I had to reach out to Cattery Little, our Mars person, because I was actually quite happily surprised. I may have actually jumped up and down, which doesn't happen that often in my world. The July 1 final, keeping in mind that this is not final, so these numbers are subject to change. We were at 8,226 adjusted ADM. Last year, we were at 8,215, which means we actually are seeing growth. And we had budgeted at 8,178 for fiscal year 19. So again, keeping in mind that because of some of the complexity of some of our enrollments, especially online learning, the hourly based students are still in flux, so we still have some records that are still getting adjusted and cleaned up. But this is really great news for the school district. Trending in our region has been a slight decline in enrollment, and as we talked all the way through the budget process, we had been projecting a slight decline in enrollment, which I think was very common, very expected. We had seen a little bump up in the spring, and then we saw a drop off in April and May, which it concerned me, and we actually lowered our pupil estimates for fiscal year 20. I don't recommend that we change our pupil estimates just yet, because these are still estimates and we have a lot of ins and outs in the district. But I think this bodes really well for us to give us some idea of where we're going as far as the district. We did see more students in our ALC doing the online programming piece of it, so we're seeing the more graduations there, so that was leading to part of some of our increased growth there as well. So this is really great news, and so we will continue to monitor this. We see a report like this approximately once a month, and then we'll get those final student numbers, and then just to kind of correlate that back to the budget process and the finance process is we won't know how much revenue we've generated for fiscal year 19 that's over for 4 more months. So when we think of the budget process and we think of what our final amounts are going to be, we're already halfway through the next fiscal year. So we work on estimates, we work on information that we get, we continue to try to be proactive and reactionary to the information that we see, but we have to use our history and knowledge to make sure that we're not changing every time we see a number change. So as thrilled as I am to see this number, and I am thrilled to see this number, even if this ends up being 8220 or 8215, this is a great number for the district. I think this is really, really great news for us. And again, we'll continue to monitor that and update you at every business committee meeting. So thank you.
I'm glad we could provide you with that little extra perk in your job, and it didn't cost us anything. So let us know how we can do that more often. Member Lofeld?
Just in connection with that, and then maybe a reference back to Member Loeffler-Kemp too. And I know that we can have other opinions on the other side, but it is important. 8226, the idea that we're trending a little bit up is such a valuable thing for our educational community, our school system. So, yeah, as a school board member, do I engage positively in my conversations in my community about what the good things are? Do maybe when I give my education report and I emphasize so strongly the good things that are going on in programming and in our educational and curriculum and our leadership of Assistant Horton and Director Netlin, of course, because honestly, I see that as one of my primary strengths to this board. I've been in the district for a long time. I've worked in the district a long time. If I can encourage families that move into my neighborhood, that move into my community, to attend our schools because we have great things going on, of course that's what we want to do. And I know my other board members do. So again, reaching out to our community, trying to get letters to the editor and commentary that support the good things going on in our district so we can increase and trend upward and get our families confident in our district is what my biggest role is on the school board. So thank you. I'm glad that we're trending up. I'll continue to work hard.
Okay, that is fantastic news. And that leads me to talk about fundraisers. There was one fundraiser week. Lester Park earned some $300 there, so I think that's great. Selling some yearbooks, so thank you for that. We have no bids, RFPs, or quotes that I know of that are on the agenda, and so we have 2 new policies, or a policy and an update to a regulation, and deleting 2 policies. So do you want to go over those changes, CFO Erickson?
Policy 412, the new policy would be just for us to update a few things, mostly in clarification language rather than having some specific language. We wanted to put positions rather than a designee rather than a specific position. I'm looking at the expense reimbursement. We did pull out some prepaid or reimbursement pieces for the authorization. What we're asking for is the supporting documentation. So if a person is going to a workshop and meals are included in the workshop, we wouldn't pay the stipend or per diem. So that would just be the clarification piece on that. But if someone is traveling and is on the road, then they would certainly get reimbursed for meals while they're not having some that are covered for them. And then again, we added the meals and parking. And then the mileage rate, we had specific mileage in the other piece, but we're just saying that we'll relate it to the IRS rate so that they change on a periodic basis, so then we don't have to change the regulation every time those amounts change. And then just the monitoring, we just added that the finance department would just oversee those as they come in for approvals. And then on the regulation, which is 412R. For the pre-approvals, we just kind of added some clarification language there. This was also to help us with the air travel, that this would happen in our designee. Right now it's happening in our office, and so it makes more sense to me in purchasing, so we're moving that process into the purchasing area. And then also, we did want to get the clarification on the travel expenses reimbursement, the meal limitations. They don't add up to $50, they add up to $47, and that will get changed. Jackie did see that. So the full day per diem would be $47 instead of $50 there, which would add up to the 10, 14, and 23. Peggy did look those up. Those are state averages from the federal recommendation. So that is those numbers from there. Is there any questions on?
I actually have a question. As I'm trying to find it, on the new one, and I'm trying to find, under reimbursement, section 4 of the expense reimbursement, 412.
Yep.
Meals was added in there, so I'm kind of confused why you need meal receipts if we're just getting a general, flat fee.
So, you can do either. So if it's over, they just wanted to have that piece in there. So that's just part of the recommendation from MSBA, but we can certainly clarify that if we're just going to do the reimbursement either way. So,
well, it seems like an unnecessary thing
Sure.
that's required of us to give you a receipt if it's only $10 that we get back, of which. I find the definitions on the regulations about claiming individual meals a bit weird, knowing that there are often 9 a.m. meetings at MDE, and knowing that I can't claim a breakfast unless I leave before 6 a.m. So if I leave at 6:30, knowing I'll get there at 9 o'clock, then I'm out my $10, stop at Toby's or something for my roll. Are those time frames really necessary? Because under breakfast, it says an employee may not claim reimbursement for breakfast unless the employee was required to leave home before 6 a.m.
These are sample policies. These are very common in school districts. The hours are very common, certainly open to adjusting or recommendations from folks that would like to change that. I think they want to give some sort of time frame. But we're certainly open to changing those. We're just taking the model policy information that we received.
Member Lafferkin?
Yeah, I haven't looked at other policies throughout other school districts, but being someone who has worked in the professional world in lots of different ways and has reviewed many policies, I think it is actually pretty common, whether it's a nonprofit or a school district, to have some time frames within there. You have to have some kind of controls in it, and and often I think there is assumptions, whether you're going to a training or something, there are breakfasts that are provided, for example. So, and I don't want to kind of get caught up in the nitty-gritty on this, but I think these are pretty standard as well. So.
And so my comment to follow that up is that 6 a.m. here, knowing that when we're going to some place that would get reimbursed is usually a 2.5-hour drive or a 2-hour drive. 6 a.m. Just seems a little early to me. I'm a night owl, but I would much prefer to see something like before 9 a.m. or before 8 a.m. Something on the cutoff on the end. 6 a.m. Do I have to prove that I left it bought my breakfast before 6 a.m. or how are you going to know that I'm going to leave home before 6 a.m. if I bought my breakfast at 7:30? Am I going to force myself to leave at 5:50 a.m. for my 9 o'clock meeting just so I can stop for breakfast to get paid for? I mean, these are minutia questions but yet by being so specific in the policy that you naturally bring this up. I mean, you look at it and you don't know what to do. Member Gorham.
Just in my experiences working as a government employee, these are pretty standard. Mm-hmm. And my understanding of them is they're just there to prevent, I think honestly, abuse of the privilege of traveling. Not implying that anyone would, but it's a protection, much like why we're not going to compensate you for meals that are already provided at a conference. It's a safeguard to assure district resources are used responsibly. That is my perspective on it, and so I'll support it as is.
Okay. That's fair. Any other questions on the policy? All righty, moving on. We're getting farther now. I don't think we have to revisit the commercial insurance renewal unless anybody has a new comment on that. The UMD CITS contract, is there any comments needed on that? I thought it was pretty straightforward myself, but I'm just one person. Okay, no other contracts, no other change orders, leases. We get some buses. Yay! So tell us why this is a cheaper option than buying, because this is a lease for 2 buses.
Thank you. So part of our budget process this year was, and we had discussions at several of our meetings about being behind on our bus replacement schedule by several years and many buses. So working with Steve Johnson, our transportation coordinator, he worked, for the last several months at trying to find ways that we could add newer or new buses to our fleet in a way that Traditionally, if we were just to buy a new bus, we'd get one new bus at that cost. What this allows us to do is to get 3 new buses right now and then pay those off in lease installments. These are lease to own. These are not lease to return. So we will own them. So there's a little slight increase in cost to do the lease versus the purchase, but we'll be able to replace 3 buses in this coming school year rather than one at a time. And in talking with Steve, and I know this will be very exciting for you, so mark your calendars for next month. Steve will be here to talk about our transportation and the process that he's going through to make sure that we have several buses that are over 150,000 miles, which are buses we should probably not be having on the road. So trying to find those replacements. So that was the process that he went through to find those leases, as well as a purchase of a special ed bus. So I will defer to him next month to go over that in a little more detail, but I really did appreciate his willingness to look at something different rather than just saying, let's get one extra new bus, which would just take us that much longer to catch up. He found this opportunity to find where we could decrease the average age for our bus fleet and do it in a way that was fiscally responsible.
Looks like there's no other questions on that. On our leasing custodial equipment from Hilliard, what kind of equipment is this, and why are we leasing it?
Well, I think I need to tell a story so everybody can understand how we ended up here and why we're doing this. But I'll start out by saying the lease price, there's no added cost in the 3-year lease. If you picked any piece of equipment that's identified on that list and were to buy it today in the state contract, that's what it would cost to pay in full. So we're not paying extra, but I'll get back to my story now. I made some notes, but I'm going to tell you a story. Back when the long-range facility plan was done, we worked, 2008 to 13. This was about 2014, and Carrie Leiter, John Holben, and I, we realized that with the staffing that we had, we were unable to do everyday cleaning. And what everyday cleaning means is you touch every space every day. We found that we were in second day cleaning, which means we touch all common areas. So corridors, entryways, bathrooms, they're cleaned every day, glass, but we're only touching a classroom every second day, which of course we don't want to do. We want to do better than that, but we didn't have the staff and we didn't have the money to buy staff, so we had to figure out a different way to do it. And I've been here for a long time, and Carrie had too, and John had, and we thought we knew the best way to clean, but we thought, well, let's look at some different companies, and Hilliard offered a cleaning program, and we were skeptical, and we did a lot of research, and we still thought we could do it better, but we gave them an opportunity to come into one of our buildings with their products and their tools and their training and their methods of cleaning. And what we found was that with the same staff and the Hilliard training, tools, and product, we were able to everyday clean in buildings that we were only second day cleaning. So we kind of got proved wrong, and we started believing in the Hilliard system. Now since that time, we've transitioned to 7 of our 15 sites are Hilliard sites right now. And we are doing everyday cleaning in all 7 of those sites. We're doing second day cleaning in the balance of the sites. Now getting to the equipment, since I've been here in 1996, similar to what Kathy mentioned about buses, we've only bought equipment 1, 2, 3, maybe a dozen vacuums. We've never gone through and done an audit, and that is what Hilliard did for us, because they indicated that our aging and obsolete equipment is negatively impacting our cleaning efficiency. So we did an audit, and we found that we're spending money on repairs of obsolete equipment that we should just be getting rid of, because we're spending just more than half the cost of the equipment on repair each year. So we did the audit, we learned and investigated this leasing program, and 10 other districts in Minnesota are currently doing that. And we actually had a list that was 3 times this size, but when I first met Kathy and she came up to facilities to learn what we do, that was really high on our list of items that we needed, and there was no way Kathy could find the money to help us out in that manner, but we broke it down into a third, and we felt that if we can get a third of the equipment, that will definitely improve our efficiency and allow us to proceed with the Hilliard program into the balance of the schools over the next several years. And this equipment better fits scrubbers, for example. Instead of a 24-inch, it might be a 30-inch, or a vacuum instead of a dual motor 30-pound, like a residential that you push. They're backpack vacuums. So they're equipment that makes us more efficient, and through that, our goal is to get to everyday cleaning in every school. We're not there yet, but I feel this is a huge step in the right direction. We have never had this opportunity since I've been here. So that's the cleaning equipment, and then now I'll touch on the matting before I open it up for questions. As we're all aware, Bob was just talking about our work comp numbers, and we have a lot of injuries, slips and falls in the wintertime. And mats are expensive. They're between $500 and $2,500. Mats serve primarily 2 purposes: keep the dirt out of the building to preserve our finishes and make cleaning easier. And also they keep people safer by a stable surface that if their shoes are wet or if it's snowy out, so they don't fall. So we were able to work the matting into this as well. So we're positively impacting 2 areas: our work comp, our cleaning, and then the new custodial equipment will greatly enhance our ability to clean and be efficient. So I don't know if that story made sense or if it helped out, but I'd like to just open it up for questions on this and go from there.
Well, I just want to say thank you for being so humble as admitting you were wrong. Just a little bit. I know we can probably place the blame more on Carrie later since he's not here. Only for that fact.
It's Carrie.
But thank you for being open to revisiting that and finding that it does work and not being afraid to go ahead with that.
Well, we did the same thing for a lot of years, and we couldn't do everyday cleaning, and they told us they could, and we didn't believe them, but we had to give them an opportunity.
Well, thank you for daring them. Member Lofall.
I followed that better than maybe some, maybe not. I don't want to dismiss anybody. We all have spent a lot of time in buildings, but I spent 31 years coaching and directing at Denfeld, so the scrubbers, the vacuums, the mats, the safety, the cleaning every other day schedule. That was new to me. I didn't know that we had 7 buildings that were getting the everyday touch. And that's tremendous because, and even a shout out to our custodial staff that work for you, even though I know Denfeld was on an every other day classroom schedule, when community comes into our building, when I'm in the building, when our students are in the building, our custodial staff is dedicated to their jobs. They want our facilities to look great. They go beyond what they probably are even asked to do. But our scrubbers and our vacuums and our ladders and our mats and the cleaning that's done is thankful. So thanks. I think
Thank you. Our people do a wonderful job, and their work is much appreciated. And I really feel that the people in the buildings are the backbone, and they're our foundation. If the buildings aren't clean, if the snow isn't shoveled, school isn't going to happen. So they work really hard to do their best, and I feel it's my responsibility to provide the proper tools and the proper training to allow them to do their jobs.
Well, I won't beat this shout out, but I appreciated Member Gorham saying everyone has a story, and you jumping on that and telling this story, because I think there are a lot of these kinds of stories that we all could be telling out in the community of great things and happening in our school that make our schools successful. And I also appreciate just as a school board member, these are some of the enriching kinds of conversations that I learn lots of things about that who would have thought when I ran that I would be learning about. So I appreciate I appreciate that. And I say this every time, but please again share with your custodians who are working, I know, very hard throughout the summer to get our schools in ship what's the word there? Ship shape, thank you. Good thing I did goof on that one. But thank them for just their hard work this summer and all the work that they're doing to get us ready for the school year.
I will. They're working very hard, and thank you.
And I just want to say that I think this is another example of excellent teamwork that has not occurred very often prior to, us coming together in this budget process. And so I want to appreciate that people take the time to listen to each other, and we're valuing everybody's input. CFO Erickson.
In a little while, you're going to hear an information about our long-range facilities plan from Mr. Spooner. And, a lot of that is related to deferred maintenance and the projects that we need extra dollars to catch up on for things that we can't get done. So providing this type of equipment helps us lower our deferred maintenance costs. And so the investment that we make now can actually reap savings in our future years when we're able to do these things now rather than not doing things. So I really did appreciate having the conversations with Dave and figuring out, obviously we weren't able to provide everything that would have been great to do things, but he was able to prioritize those things and we were able to do that, which ultimately should lead to efficiencies in future years. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn on that, but I guess I just really felt like it was important to say that part of what we're doing now is really an actual cost savings measure in a future year.
And I'd like to add that I really need to thank Kathy and appreciate her willingness to listen and to understand the true need and be able to act on that. I and all of our staff appreciate this very much.
I like hearing all this thank you stuff. It gives you the warm fuzzies anyway, and I think these are some of the good things that people don't know happen here, how we're building our community. So if there are no other questions on that, we lead to the lease on Northwoods Merritt Creek. I had one question on that. Knowing that the campus is several buildings, I'm not quite sure what we lease or what they're leasing. What do we own on the campus, I guess is what the answer question is.
We don't own anything. This is an operational lease. So we're providing the educational services, so they charge us, and then we are able to lease levy that portion. I actually do have a call into the Department of Education just to get a little clarity on this, so that if there's any, I don't know that there'd be any changes to this, but I do have a couple questions that I wanted. This is a new lease to me, so I just wanted to make sure that I understood all the components of that before it gets to you next Tuesday.
Sure, that information actually brings more questions, so I'll wait to see if you get some questions answered first. Yes. Okay, resolutions. We got donations. We have lots of donations from our community that we gratefully appreciate for many things, and so I'm not going to belabor that point right now. Changing some bank signers for people that retired. I don't think that's pretty routine. Now we're on to the big event of the evening, our 10-year plan. Do we get a story with this one too?
No, I'm sorry, I can't tell a story. I think I'm actually going to stick to the plan. And as you're aware, we're tonight reviewing first review of the FY21 long-term facilities maintenance plan. And I want to reiterate that the board's duty is to review the plan and consider the plan, but the goal and the need is to approve FY21. And the reason FY21 is the funding for FY21 will be contained in the levy that you certify and approve in December. So we're primarily looking at FY21. FY19 is attached for information for you and for MDE. FY20 is attached for updated, amended information, and FY21 is what we're looking at and what will be funded in December from a future levy. FY 22 to 29, this is kind of strange. I put time into it, and I talked to MDE with another question, and they don't even want to see it. They don't even look at it, but they want to know that districts are thinking about 22 to 29. They're concerned with 21, and that's it. They want to make sure that we are doing our due diligence and thinking ahead, but this is a living, breathing document. So it changes. It could change tomorrow. On page 82 is the resolution, which is the same as what we've used every year. 83, I don't know if anybody has any questions on, but 83 is the note is this plan should not be considered all-inclusive regarding the current school facility needs. The process of assessment is ongoing and annually involves a gathering of updated needs, information from building administrators. We are continually striving to realize even greater accuracy relative to the planning for deferred and scheduled maintenance repair needs of our school buildings. And I'll just touch on that and say we're in good shape, and we're lucky compared to many school districts because we have such relatively new buildings, new systems, new roofs, new building envelopes. That's a huge asset for us. I'll skip to page 85. This is the school board adopted the first capital facilities plan, now known as the long-term facilities maintenance 10-year plan, in February of 1996. Projects are in some cases required by building official order or recommended with input from the following: state fire marshal order, proposals from building principals and staff related to their needs, projects identified through facilities management department assessments, and projects identified through district administration or school board directives. The purpose of this plan is to create a comprehensive, consistent, continuous means through which the district will identify and budget for projects required to preserve our facilities' capacity and provide functional, safe, and healthy spaces for learning. Below that is just some further description if you're interested when you review the state documents that are attached. Page 86, project prioritization. From the plan inception, projects are incorporated based on their need relative to impact on the integrity of the exterior envelope of the building or the building structure, their impact on safety and health, and the function or needs that do not fit into the first two categories. Other information to consider relative to this plan: the current replacement value of the district's capital facilities infrastructure is estimated at roughly $675 million. The district maintains approximately 2.2 million square feet of building floor area. Recent construction experience indicates our school facilities would cost approximately $300 per square foot to rebuild. If provided with proper maintenance and repair, it is reasonable to expect that most of the Duluth school buildings will provide adequate educational program space for a total of at least 50 to 75 years. The current average age of the district facilities is approximately 44 years, considering only those buildings that are currently used by the district. Number 3, generally accepted guidelines indicate the average annual maintenance and repair budget for a typical school in Minnesota should be approximately $2 to $3 per square foot. With this basis applied to all of our facilities, the district should be spending roughly between $4.4 and $6.5 million per year on maintenance and repair, factoring a 50-year service life, which we're not quite there. The next several pages are revenue and expenditure Excel documents, which go to the state, and these are supporting documents for the 10-year plans. I didn't write the page number, I think starting on page 91. So page 92 starts out as the actual FY19 as of July 2nd, and it's only this will change in MDE. We update the website live with MDE because we get invoices past July 2nd. I mean, July 1st is the new fiscal year, but we have projects that were completed in April, May, June that we don't get invoiced until July, possibly August. That information has to be updated to the state. So This is all updated information current to July 2nd. The next fiscal year, FY20, is amended because we're in FY20 right now. We're doing projects that are identified here in FY20. So FY20 is the most current information to date available. And then on page 93, budget year FY21 current board approval year has got, I'll just read the projects down that are down the line. The LTFM compliant in-district salary and benefit, and that's the same as the FY19 amount of $1.128 million. Our health and safety management of $200,000, environmental health and safety projects district-wide $200,000, LTFM compliant maintenance repairs, time and material projects $200,000, Rockridge $1.1 million for a roof, and Congdon exterior wall restoration, brick replacement, tuck pointing, and brick repair $750,000 for a total expenditure of $3.578 million. It's important to note that we're still supplementing the general fund with the salary and the maintenance repair cost of $200,000. I don't know how far you want me to read and go through this, but I maybe would just open it up for questions and we can talk as needed.
Superintendent?
Some people may be aware that we have done some tuck pointing at Congdon. Could you talk a little bit more about why we're doing some more?
The project that we did at Congdon, and I think that was FY 2015, we only did a third of that building. And the third of that building was done because we had scaffolding set up to do the clay tile roof. So we did the roofing. There's only so much capacity in Duluth to do so much work in 1 year, and we couldn't get the whole building tuck pointed. We couldn't, and the roof done at the same time. The roof was a critical part. We bid the roof and we bid the upper third. So we've got the lower third and the windows left to do on that building envelope. And it's not exactly a third and 2/3, but you can, if you're at the building, you can clearly see what has been done and what hasn't been done.
Okay. I have a question as to why are we, let's start over. Is the LTFM salary and benefit amount supposed to be repaid? Is that the one that would be repaid with general fund?
Well, a year ago, to have a balanced budget, and Kathy can jump in, we made a salary shift, Mr. Hassler and I. It's compliant to use LTFM funds for employees that do deferred maintenance. We have a certain percentage of some of our employees are paid salary out of LTFM. And compliant deferred maintenance projects of up to about $200,000 we're paying out of LTFM. So at some point we need to buy that back so that the whole LTFM investment is going to building preservation. And I don't know when we can buy that back. Kathy might have a better handle on that. Or I know she's got a better handle than I do, but at some point we do have to get that back into the general fund.
Well, then that was going to be my next question, is why is it scheduled for 4 years, I think, in your plan? Is that what you're anticipating the length of time we'll need to make it happen? Or?
I kept it the same as what Mr. Hassler wanted it, and next fiscal year, maybe it would be out, maybe it won't. Kathy would have to talk on that, but.
Right now, we did talk and are keeping it in the LTFM plan. We just don't know the future as far as the budget, and because they're qualifying costs, we can keep them in there. As Mr. Spooner had mentioned earlier, the document is fluid, so should there be a future year, even in fiscal year 21, if we can find that we can shift those costs and actually do building work, that would really make the most sense. But until we actually know that, we wanted to keep this here as a placeholder. But what that does is it does shift those projects out into future years, because those dollars are being used for another purpose than they were originally intended. If you were to go back and look at Mr. Spooner's old LTFM plans and those weren't in there, we would have been using those for projects. So the projects kind of get pushed out. And just a couple comments, because my finance nerdy side of me is getting into LTFM. Very complicated funding process. So we're going out and asking for authority. So we're going to submit this to the state. They're going to say, yes, we approve these projects. There's an amount per pupil that every district qualifies for. Then we have other things that may qualify to stack on top of that original amount. There's a small aid portion that we do get for long-term facilities maintenance, but required by statute, that must be used to defer debt service first. We do have debt related to our long-term facilities, so that goes to help lower the debt service costs, not the general fund project costs. And then as we change projects, as we go along, for example, if the fire marshal were to show up 2 weeks from now after we've approved the LTFM budget and said, I need you to spend $1 million on something right away, the project's already been approved. We can still do those. We can still get those submitted, but it'll take 2 more years before we get those dollars as reimbursements. There's an adjustment portion on the levy that the state comes back in and says, here's what you asked for, here's what you actually did, and we're either going to give you more authority or take away prior authority, levy authority, to get us to actual. So what we're doing here today is what we know at the time, but again, at any one point, these things could change over time. So, but we are required to stay within the rules and obligations of what LTFM provides for us, and I'm sure Dave can talk a little bit more specifically on what it means as far as what qualifies. Not just anything can be paid for out of our long-term facilities money. So these are really deferred projects, deferred maintenance costs, or health and safety related costs. So we can't necessarily use these for just any maintenance costs. So we have to be really thoughtful about what we put in the plan as well as how that gets planned out over time. But from a finance standpoint, we have to be really thoughtful about what that looks like both on our levy and how we plan for that in our budget.
Ms. Erickson really brought up a good point that I'd like to provide a quick analogy. If you could pick up Denfeld and shake it upside down, everything that falls out we can't use LTFM on to fix or repair. Turn the building back up, we've got a wall that's damaged. I can fix that wall, but I can't move that wall. It has to be like for like. If we were in this boardroom, I couldn't remodel the boardroom into a different configuration. The carpet can be replaced like for like, but I can't. It would be a stretch to say we're going to put terrazzo down if we took carpet up. So I hope that maybe helps a little bit, but permanently fixed items like for like only.
So that kind of strikes my thought of putting disco balls in here. Might make our meetings a little more fun.
Fundraise for it. I just have a question about it. So you gave us a background on Congdon for 21, but we're going to replace a roof at Rockridge, and that was a new facility for us.
We couldn't afford to do the roof when we renovated.
That's what I thought.
For the hills,
Okay.
so we deferred the roof out until this year.
Okay. Makes sense.
I have a couple ahas I took away from this, I guess, from the entire report. The first thing that I took away is that the extreme lack of maintenance that is being performed on the buildings. Many buildings have only a couple things that are going to, planned for expenses that will be replaced or worked on in the next 10 years. And 2 buildings, MacArthur and Piedmont, aren't even on the list. So, and I know that they're going to have a maintenance need to come up in the next 10 years. And so I find that disturbing, knowing that we're working with the money that we have and we can't meet our needs. Which also points out, when Mr. Spooner, you pointed out that we should be spending the 4.4 to 6.7 million or
$2 to $3 per square foot.
Sure, that.
and Piedmont, for example, it's in relatively good condition.
Oh, sure.
We don't want to spend money where we don't need to. And buildings typically, painted surfaces should last 20 years short of abuse. Carpet should go 20 years. So there's not really a huge amount of needs at those 2 buildings right now.
Sure, but I'm just saying right now, but we don't know what's going to happen in 10 years. I mean, earthquake, who knows? That would be bad.
And you're probably shocked a little bit by the very ending number of 70 plus million, but one aha that I had was that if you took the 6.5 or 6.6 million per year and multiply it by 10 years, we're pretty close to that if the board were to choose to stay in this building.
Thank you for nailing my aha there.
I'm sorry, I ruined it.
No, that's all right. The one and only thing I have left to say is, the $49 million to fix this building. And I said it 3.5 years ago, and I'll say it today. Does the community want us to use education money to fix this? And I'm not advocating to tear it down or sell it or get out, or I want to know, does the community value this building versus the education of our students? Knowing that we can't do both well all at once, and our focus is kids.
It's important to note that this money shouldn't be considered educational money. It's specific levied dollars for building maintenance.
Thank you for that clarification. I know. It's money that can't be spent in other ways and used on classrooms. I'll make that absolutely clear, yes. But it's still money that every other building we're not maintaining or planning for future needs. And do we have money if we were to sell this place to create a new space somewhere else? Do we have that money? Is that an expense that we could cover? Or should we really look at being here long-term and converting to steam heat and all other sorts of fun things? Or from steam heat, sorry. Yeah.
That is a good point. And if Historic Old Central weren't in here, you'd see all of our other buildings in here with painting and with carpet. I could easily spend that money keeping our buildings looking pristine rather than waiting to paint, for example, till they look really bad. I mean, I would like to be able to spend $6.6 million a year on our buildings and have beautiful facilities that rival the metro, but we're not at that point right now.
Superintendent?
I understand how Hawks got into this conversation, Historic Old Central High School, I'm sorry. Because it does have some big numbers in this 10-year plan. And we have begun that conversation. And I think when it's on a future agenda, we can continue that conversation.
Yes, sir. I will look forward to future conversation, and I won't push a conversation. Because we want to get out of here soon, I know. All right. Any other questions on long-term 10-year plan? All right. I thank you, even though you did kind of have a little story. I appreciate those, and I know that this is a lot of work and encapsulates exactly what you do for us. So we have contracts to go over. Anybody want to talk about any of those contracts?
Could I just make one quick comment on the LTF?
Sure.
Just that the board approval is required by July 31st for us to get the long-term facilities maintenance authority on the levy. So by you approving this next Tuesday, that gives us that authority. So if we didn't have all of our documentation in, we wouldn't have the levy authority. So it's critical that this gets approved at our next week's board meeting.
Aye, Captain. I hear ya. I don't have any questions on contracts of any of them, so yay, we can skip over all of that. Informational, when we can go right back to Mr. Spooner then with his facilities report.
It's a relatively normal, busy summer, and people are working hard. The LTFM projects are going fine. I won't read this word for word. I'll just open it up for questions. Things are going really good.
The end, okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, there's nothing really out of the ordinary that's occurred this month. Cleaning is going on. We've actually completed cleaning Lakewood, and we've closed that down for energy savings. We've got the staff helping out elsewhere. Operations is going fine. Health and safety, we have the asbestos survey document that went out, and that's contract is signed. And I just would like to open it up for questions. There really is nothing unusual that's occurred this month. It's been a really good month.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Thank you, as always, for a very thorough report. But the emergency response radio signal boosters that were installed at East and Denfeld, I was just curious again about, was that, how will that help us more? Yeah.
Well, what happened when we had the event that occurred at East High School, we found that police radios, fire department radios, they could not communicate from floor to floor in that building. Mm-hmm. And that was a problem because when the responders couldn't communicate, they didn't know what each other they were doing. So after that event occurred, the fire department and police department, they worked together and they did an audit of our two high schools. And we found that they could not communicate from one end of the building to the other. So we had to add this device, and it's a repeater essentially. That it's a secondary device that will collect a radio signal midpoint and then project it to the next radio. And they're going to be looking at all of our buildings, and we'll probably, if I had to guess, I estimate we might have to do this in half the buildings.
Okay.
And that's a fire marshal requirement. It's in statute, so we had authority to use health and safety funds, but we didn't have any choice. It was a fire marshal order.
Okay. Well, thank you. I was hoping it was in response to some of the concerns that rose with that incident at East, so thank you.
It was.
Member Loeffler, or Member Lowfald, sorry.
I don't see this on your report, but I was just wanting some information or update on the Denfeld stairwell project, and if my concern mainly is that I know that, so as the building shut down, class reunions sometimes go on tours. Starting the second week in August, some of our athletic programs and our extracurricular, academic extracurriculars I don't know if they've been notified if they're coming into the building or not.
Everybody's
Can
been
you give us
notified.
an update?
Yeah, sure. Member Loeffler, or not Loeffler, sorry. It's been a long day. The high school, Denfeld High School, is actually ahead of schedule. There are activities that are occurring right now. The main office, the weight room, the gym, they're being used. It's the main old section of the building. We've got 2 stairwells out of 7 that we're working on. We're ready to do a punch list in, I think it's scheduled for 2.5 weeks from now. And I expect to be done probably the first week of August, and that'll give us a couple weeks to clean. Our initial thoughts were that we weren't going to be done right until the end of August or Labor Day weekend, but we are a couple weeks ahead of schedule. I was just there yesterday. Things are looking good, and I don't foresee any issues with people coming back for school-sponsored activities, but I have not had any requests for any reunion visits.
Thank you for that. I was worried about early registration dates, and again, I think some of our extracurriculars start mid-August, and if we're clear on that, I am a coach of a program that usually starts the second week in August, and I haven't heard anything about not being able, and I would be more in that media center area, but I haven't really gotten any communication that I'm either not allowed in or I will be, or it's up in the air and they'll get back to me.
I worked with Denfeld leadership quite often prior to the project starting and informed them that the new part of the building, the office and that upstairs, would be available for use.
Okay.
The gym, and that's pretty much it until we're done. Okay. But I expect to be done that second week of August, second or third week.
Okay. I'm just happy that we sent our furry little friends, four-legged friends at Congdon to summer camp or somewhere that they found new homes and new ways, and we haven't had any other issues up here.
Are you referencing raccoons or rats?
Rats, but raccoons are new.
We've had a raccoon eating out of the garbage that we've caught, but the rodents, we haven't had any activity. I don't remember exactly, but I think it was in the March timeframe that they started seeing no activity. We've still had the same baits out now, and we will until August. In August, we're going to put baits out that are non-hazardous, that is a bait that it's an indicator bait. They can tell if anything's eating it. So we won't have anything hazardous when the students come back. We won't make any notifications as per statute because we won't have any rodent poisonous type material out. It'll just be a same type of container, but an indicator bait. But as far as we can tell, for 4 months now, we haven't had any rat activity.
Nice. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Property sale update still says document pending. Will we have something before the meeting, or is that going to be postponed?
I believe that is the completed purchase agreement, and it's done, and yeah, it's coming. It'll be there.
Okay. And our annual grants and donations summary. Who wants to take that? All right. CFO Erickson.
Well, Peggy actually compiled all this information. She took all the data out of Business Plus in terms of where we receive what would be considered grants. Some of our entitlements are considered grants. So under the federal programs, we get they're considered grants. So this was just, again, a 5-year summary that I believe you've received in the past. And if anyone has any specific questions on the amounts or what's included, I would need to defer to Peggy because she's got the list and she is not here. So, but you can see that we're down just slightly compared to last year in total grant costs or grant recipient revenues.
Okay. No questions on that. All right. Future items. Get to talk about more bus fleet bus people, or were you talking about the bus fleet? The Homecroft Field update, that's why I didn't talk about that in the long-term facilities 10-year plan. So I'm looking forward to that conversation next month. School board election resolutions for election judges and polling places, and policy updates. With that, we're adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you, Alana, for running the committee. Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.